This is not just any game. It's Mikhail Tal, the magician from Riga, unleashing chaos against his own coach, Alexander Koblenz. The year 1957. What happens on this board is a masterpiece of madness. Tal opens with pawn to e4, and Koblenz responds with c5, the Sicilian defense. Then comes knight to f3, and black plays pawn to d6. White strikes the center early with pawn to d4. Black captures, pawn takes pawn on d4, and the knight jumps in, taking the pawn on d4. Both players develop fast. Knight to f6, then knight to c3. Bishop to g5 pins the knight. Black replies with pawn to e6, reinforcing the center. Then comes queen to d2, a signal white wants to castle long. Bishop to e7 from black, and white castles queenside. Black mirrors with kingside castling. Knight jumps to b3, and the queen slides over to b6. White plays f3, stabilizing the center. Black advances with pawn to a6, then pawn to g4. The storm begins. Rook to d8, and bishop to e3. Central control. Queen to c7 from black. h4 from Tal, preparing the classic kingside expansion. Black plays pawn to b5. Counterattack on the queen side. g5 from white, gaining space. Knight drops to d7. And now g6, a brilliant pawn sacrifice. Black captures, pawn takes pawn, and then the hammer, h5. Black responds, pawn takes pawn again. But now, rook to h5, instantly activating. Knight to f6, and Tal ramps it up with the other rook. Rook to h1. Pawn to d5, trying to counterattack. e5 from Tal, cutting through the center. Knight to e5, attacking. Bishop to f4, white is building pressure. Queen to h2, the pieces are circling. King steps to f8, awkward and dangerous. Queen to h8, check. Knight jumps to g8 to block. Rook to h7, stunning. Black plays pawn to f5, desperate. Tal brings out the bishop. bh6. Black shuffles the rook to d7. Bishop retreats to b5, cutting off the escape. Rook to f7, more defense. Now comes rook to g1, preparing for the final strike. Knight to d4. Black is trying anything. White captures. Knight takes the bishop on e5. Knight to c6, hitting back. Bishop to e3, guarding. Black pushes pawn to d4, trying to break through. Rook to h1, threatening disaster. Bishop to g5, now the attack is unstoppable. Tal calmly plays rook to h6. Pawn to d3 from black. White plays pawn takes bishop, and now black pushes pawn to d2. King to d1, sidestepping pressure. Queen captures on c6. But now, rook to f6, pressuring f7. Rook to f7, and then queen to g7, check. But it wasn't checkmate. The king could still escape. Yet Koblenz resigned. He saw the writing on the wall. Mikhail Tal's attack was too perfect. If you enjoyed this masterpiece, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know. Which Tal game should we break down next?